Testing. Great morning, people. Great morning. Let's get the platforms good to go. You know how we do it, day in and day out, every single day. Putting in that work, baby. Test, testing. Test. All right, LinkedIn, what's happening? What's happening? LinkedIn. Putting in that work, baby. That's you hearing it from my phone because I checked it on my phone. Testing. All right, Facebook is good. Test. That's you hearing it from my phone because I checked it on my phone. Test. All right, YouTube is good, and let me just check. YouTube real quick, and then we will go from there. Got a great show today, guys, as I always do. That's how we get down here in the move swiftly world. Cause I'm done. Testing. Test 1 2. All right, we're back. We're here. Everything is good. Everything is lovely. Good morning, folks. Happy Tuesday. Happy Top 5 Tuesday. If you're a regular consumer to my work, you know what I mean when I say Top 5 Tuesday. If you are not a regular consumer to my work, if it's your first time tuning into my world, nice to meet you. Let me just introduce myself. My name, Aswan Crookshank. Your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, former Division I college football player, and current 5-time published author and educator. And what I do, what I created, what this business is all about. When you see these plus LY pencils, it's all about taking the lessons, the teamwork lessons that you learn on the football field and aligning them with businesses and business owners so they have a staff, have an organization, have a set of employees, have a group of people that moves as cohesively and as strong and as progressively as a championship high school or youth football team. That is what I do in a nutshell. And what we have today, again, like I had mentioned to you just now when I was kind of stumbling on the intro because I'm so pumped right now, is something I call a Top 5 Tuesday. And as you see on the title, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects to actually talk about, which is book sales. Understanding that the writing of the book and the selling of the book are two completely different things. So we're going to be diving into the top 5 ways on how to actually sell your book. All right. So before I get too deep into that, let me just get through a couple announcements here, and then I'll break down how I came up with the idea to do this list, and we'll break down every element of the list. And the great thing about what we're going to be discussing today is the fact that I don't have all of it figured out. You know, I am still actually consider myself very young in the authorship world, seeing that I'm 5 books in. I'm still in I just turned 36 this past last month, so still considered in my mid 30s, and I'm competing with authors that have been around for years that are in their 60s, 70s, and they have libraries and stuff, and I'm still in the process of learning how to make it so a book sells year in and year out and get that regular bulk, get those regular orders of books every single day. So it's going to be great because I'm not talking at you today. And a lot of times it's not me talking at you whenever you consume my work. It's me talking to you, talking you through a lot of the life challenges and things of that nature. So like I said, we'll get into all that. Let me just get through a couple announcements here, and then we will go from there. First things first. West Palm Beach. If you are interested, if you would like free boxing lessons, be sure to hit that QR code that you see right there on the screen. Do them every 2 weeks, 9 a.m. on Saturday mornings. It's a local park not too far from Wellington area. Just message me if you would like some more information on that. Business owners, the people I serve, the folks that I mentioned when I talked about what I do, the business owners of 20 or more employees. If you have not yet, go to freeguide.makeyourmove.com. That's freeguide.makeyourmove.com. What I've created 10 steps, a 10-step process that you can use right now that'll make it so your business moves in a more efficient manner and you can apply it right now. And finally, patreon.com. Make sure you tap in with me on the Patreon link. As 144, we have exclusive content. We're building out exclusive content for business owners that do want to get better. They have a really tough time keeping their staff together, keeping people hungry, keeping people really just motivated. One of the things that is so very important is when people walk into their work, walk into their job every single day, they walk into it as if they own the place. They walk into it as if, being cognizant, being very mindful of what the owner has to go through. That is so important that you're able to take that mindset, that worldview, and align it with every single person that's walking into that organization, every single person that's receiving a check every 2 weeks or every bi-week, twice a month, whatever it is. Every single person is getting paid, whether you're the custodian or you're the person that's managing the entire carnival, whatever it is. You have to make sure every single person knows the feeling of what it's like to own the business, and they walk into their jobs as if they own the company. That is the message that we're trying to convey over here in the Move Swiftly world. That is what we create over here in the Move Swiftly world. That's what we constantly reinforce. We constantly reinforce this. All right. So as far as today, what we're going to talk about is the foundation of how this whole thing got started, thought leadership and how thought leadership is a force multiplier. Let's make sure all my stuff is queued up here. First of all, it's a force multiplier. All right. I'll save that for later. It's a false multiplier. All right. And what I mean when I say it's a false multiplier is I mean that when an individual picks up their first book voluntarily, their life changed. Their life changes. I mean, voluntary. I'm not talking about the stuff that the school forces you to memorize, and then you read the book, and then you get an A or B or C on the test. You pass the test, and you never really think about the book ever again. I'm not talking about the stuff that is just simply a teacher checking a box and say, yeah, I did what I had to do, and it's up to you to read it. And if you needed to cheat on the test, and you cheated on the test, and you got your grade, whatever it is, I didn't catch. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when life hits you and you realize that you're in transition and something is, now something is changing and will be permanently changed in your life. And you pick up that first book. This is why I'm still a huge fan of hardcover books, and I'm still a huge fan. I still think it's important that we recognize the the value in. We're going to be talking about audio versions of books in a second there in a couple of minutes and some of my later points, but I personally still am a firm believer in making sure that there's like hard copy books. Like you have to have hard copy books because of the value in it. You never know how it can touch somebody, like being able to hold something, open it back, highlight it, and not have to go back and listen to it. Having that hard copy book is something that is always going to be a high value, high priority thing, depending on how the book touches a person. All right. I've said this on so many occasions, is in many ways, the books find you. All right. You don't find the book, but the books actually find you. And one of I'll tell you what got me into reading so heavily or so ferociously in where I was in my life, and I'd say the two books that really have made my favorite is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. So technically, actually, yeah, the three. All right, I'm going to give you the three books. The story of the three books that absolutely changed my life, changed everything, changed the way I saw the world, changed the worldview and that I had. And all three of these books, four books. All right. The four books that I have actually consumed that has absolutely changed my worldview and where I was and how it touched my mind, and why it's important that we always value hardcover books, even though, yes, we do have podcasts now, we do have audio versions of books, but the hard copies of these books is so valuable because of how much they actually can change your life. All right, so first one is Lou Holtz, Winning Every Day. Actually, I didn't even plan on going here, but you know what? I think the visual is going to be just as important as I explain these things to you. All right, Lou Holtz, Winning Every Day. Let me. I'm gonna do that. Let's do that. All right, Lou Holtz, Winning Every Day. I had just graduated. I had just graduated from college. I finished at Stony Brook, and I went. It was my dream school to go there, and I finally finished. I was done playing ball. I accomplished everything I needed to accomplish as a player, and I didn't finish it. Oh yeah, right. I didn't finish it, but I knew I was done. It was going into my senior year, and based on the way things were going on the field, I knew I was kind of playing time wasn't what I wanted it to be, and I knew I was getting into coaching at that point. I went into my senior year as a college football player, knowing that was going to be it, because I was barely getting in the game then. So playing in the NFL just wasn't going to happen. So I was already thinking about what I was going to be doing next. So coaching made obviously the most sense. Being a football coach made the most sense. And I remember going to the library with my mother, and that's something that I still value even to this day, that she, instilled in myself and my sister, in terms of just being able, and especially when you're dealing with kids, going to the library, getting them familiar with it, all that kind of stuff. So I remember going to the library with her. I was home for break for something. And the library had something called Friends of a bookstore, Friends of the Library. And I went in there wanting to get Tony Dungy's book, because I associated with him. At that point, he was the first African-American coach to win a Super Bowl. I paid attention to his career from back when he was in Tampa. So I went into this bookstore saying, I want to get Tony Dungy's book titled Quiet Strength. That was I researched it. I saw that he had a book and I wanted to get it. And they didn't have Quiet Strength, but they had this book that you're looking at on the screen. If you're watching this visually, they had Winning Every Day by Lou Holtz. All right. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, yeah, I know that name, Lou Holtz. And because, again, I'm a football guy, you hear the name Lou Holtz and all that kind of stuff. So I saw it, and it may have been $1 and some change. It been like $1.25 because of, where it was and all that kind of stuff. And I showed my mother, and she goes, man, why don't you just buy that book? It's right there. It's $1.25. I know it's not the one that you wanted going in, but just buy it, just get it. Stop limiting yourself. That's what she told me, right? So I buy it, and I swear, to this day, it's the greatest football book that I have ever read. It's in my top 5 because I've never in my life, and I've played for tons of old white coaches. That was me. That was the football world I came from. And I had never felt so relatable to a person, so connected to a person. Everything he said, every single story, there's so many things in that book that I still, just looking at it, still brings me back to that time. All right. That was book number 1, and why I'm an advocate of hardcover books. The next one is, and I did read Quiet Strength, and I did make sure I consumed that. The next one after that is one I have spoken about on so many occasions, is right here, right? Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers. Again, with a name like Aswan Cruikshank, you always feel like an outlier. You always feel like an outlier, regardless of what environment you're in. I went from public school to private school to liberal arts to big university, every online, every job I've had, all the things I've done. When I read this, it absolutely changed everything for me, because he took success and he put it into a very simple math problem. He didn't make it so people are devoid of hard work or anything like that, but he did also make sure that they recognize a lot of fortunate circumstances that a lot of successful people have. And he put that in a situation, he put that in a situation where, or put that in a problem where people can understand it, appreciate it, and move on and recognize what their gifts are. So again, Malcolm Gladwell, another one that I found actually, here's how I found this book. It was a late legend. His name is Roland Grimes. Roland Grimes. I had a meeting with a guy named Roland Grimes, and Roland Grimes was late to this meeting. Well, no, he wasn't late. We were all supposed to meet together, and he was waiting in his car because I got there early and he was there early, and we were all waiting for the other people to arrive. So both of us were actually on time for the meeting. And I remember when we finally got into the IHOP, he had this book on him, and as he was talking and, you know, bringing up a lot of things as we're talking sports, because again, this was around that time where I'm graduating college and I'm trying to figure out how to get into the coaching world, right? He had this book sitting on the IHOP table, and he's like, Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers. And he talks about how we have fortunate circumstances and certain things. And he was so passionate about what he was reading in this book that by the time, I think it was maybe a year or so later, that I saw it somewhere. It might have been at that same, actually, I think it was like at a Barnes and Noble or something like that. I picked it up, and it had the same effect on me. So read it, and I bought the audio version of it. I mean, he easily became my favorite author. All right. I said 4. All right. Here's the next one. The next one I got to tell you about. This one. Oh, Lord have mercy. Oh, Lord. Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison. Absolute game changer. All right. And again, I gotta walk you through the process before I give you the top 5 ways to sell it. I have to give you the process because I've been sold on multiple books. Okay. Visible Man was introduced to me when I was a senior in high school by the legendary Mike Hibbs, Coach Mike Hibbs. Coach Mike Hibbs came in as an English teacher, but he was also the men's basketball coach. And he was merging that world. Again, a world that I'm so like knee deep in now that it's so surreal to think about how it was that senior year when I'm college. I'm not college, but I'm getting ready to go play in college. I was the captain of my high school football team. And then this guy, Mr. Mike Hibbs, enters into my life. You know, all this talk about basketball. And again, growing up in Maryland, basketball was the thing. And when he would talk about this book, Invisible Man, his face would just glow. It would blow up. So he gave us the book and I read it. I didn't actually read it in school because that, you know, this was high school and we didn't appreciate these things. But it was later on after I graduated college where I actually picked up this book at that same library that I was talking to you about. I picked this book up and then I got the Cliff Notes version of it. And as I was reading one chapter, because it's written in a like old English text to where you really aren't going to pick up on it. So I get this version of the book, and then I also read the Cliff Notes version, and the things are starting to connect about what Ralph Ellison is going. Not Ralph Ellison, but what the young boy is going through in terms of him being invisible, not necessarily being invisible. People can't see him, but invisible in terms of what he's trying to do, what he's saying, and you know all the stuff that. You know, Mike Hibbs would help us and he lectured us throughout the book. And it was like, just like I was reading Outliers, it felt like I was reading my biography, felt like I was reading my actual biography. And let me just tell you, this same book is what got me to Florida, because Visible Man was a book that I was moved by. And then I saw that there was an actual school. Look at it. It's coming. It's coming. This was the first school I ever interviewed with. It's called Visible Man Academy. Out there in Sarasota. And that's why when I first got out here, it's in Bradenton. It was in Bradenton and we were going to do some stuff with IMG. But when I first got out here, this was the reason I'd started living in St. Petersburg, because I was going to do some work with them. And then you look at the work I'm doing now, it's very, very similar. And it was all guided because I read the book Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison was introduced to me when I was a senior, and it gave me some direction in terms of what it is all about. So again, I could spend the next hour just talking about all of the complexities that come with the book, but I do have to get to the list. So this was number 3. I said Winning Every Day, Outliers, Invisible Man, and then this one that has been mentioned on, hold on, let me remove it so you guys don't have to see it, that has been mentioned on my platform more than my actual book is something, and it's actually the perfect book to transition into as we get into the list. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. All right, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The first time ever in my life hearing the concept of assets, liabilities, how to take all your money and make sure it's going into assets so your money makes more money, and then makes more money, to have that mentality of whenever I get paid, it's going into some sort of an asset that's bringing me more money as opposed to it going to a liability. Understand, before reading this book, I remember having a job when I was 19 years old, 19 going on 20. I remember actually saying this and being proud of saying this. This was before I read this book. All right. I remember saying that every time I get paid, this was what I used to do. Every time I get paid, I would go to Lids and buy me a fitted cap. Every single 2 weeks, I would go to Lids and be stupid, absolutely stupid. And I read this book and almost kicked that is the stupidest shit you used to do. I don't own any of those fitted caps that I spent my money, the money that I made back when I was 19. I'm making like $7 an hour working at the health club. I would drive over to, I believe it was like Wheaton Mall or something like that. I buy me a fitted cap from Lids and looking good, looking on point. And then when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he talked about assets and liabilities and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, you look back at your former self and you're like, what a dumbass. That was the stupidest thing you could possibly do. And again, this book was actually given to me because my mother was seeing this transition when I graduated from college, and somebody had gave her a gift, and then she gave it to me. And they didn't give her the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, but it was all the stuff that came with it, the game, the cash flow quadrant, all this stuff, all the merch and everything that was coming with Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then also, I got so into it that I went to one of these seminars. I went to one of because he built up a whole platform, this is cash flow classic, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, one of these master classes. So I went to one of these, and we talked about the real estate and some of the people and how we built a business. He literally built a profitable business off of just this one book, and that's why this one, absolute game changer for me. And then when you really look at the people that have been on my show, I've had hundreds of guests on my show, and that book is mentioned over and over and over. And in fact, if you go back and listen to Raul West, all right, Raul West, she was on the show last week. She knows Robert Kiyosaki. She had actual lunch with Robert Kiyosaki and met him, and they talked and all that kind of stuff. So that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, is a very, very important one. And it brings me to the topic of what we're going to be talking about today, which is the top 5 ways to sell your book. And I want to make sure I'm holding this up as I say that, so you guys know I'm not just talking to you. I'm speaking to you from experience. All right. Top 5 ways to sell your book. All right. Writing these and selling these are 2 completely different conversations. All right. Say it again for the people in the back. Do you hear me, folks in the back? Writing these and selling these are 2 completely different conversations. Completely different conversations. I've paid thousands of bucks, thousands of dollars to get coached by folks who have these platforms, have books, and have things going on just to teach me and regulate it. And I would pay even more. All right. You cannot stop getting coached on how to sell your book, because it's a lifetime job. It's something that you have to do every single day, because you got to live it, right? You got to live it. You got to really believe what you put in those pages. You got to be it and believe it and see it and literally be the person that you are. You cannot slack when it comes to selling your book, because it got to come from all of this, from your mind to the heart, everything. It's got to be all out there. So very first thing to remember. Very first thing to remember when it comes to how to sell your book, the best way to sell your book is right here. Leverage public speaking. All right. So here's what got me re-energized or reignited to give this particular top 5 list. Number 1, football season has officially come to an end. The 2024 season has come to an end. Major college football and the NFL season is over, and we got a couple weeks here, and then we're going to be getting into the draft. And you got basically how it works, especially, diehard sports people like me, is this time of year. All right, we got March Madness coming up, and then NBA playoffs, and then within the NBA playoffs, the NFL draft is happening, and that pretty much starts back up football season. So only going to spend maybe a couple of weeks not talking football, but we're able to be around. We're able to at least have some March Madness and NBA playoffs to get to, which is why remember that COVID year, boy, when the March Madness thing got canceled and the NBA playoffs, it was rough. It was rough. It was rough. It was rough to find, things to look at and talk about and stories and all that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, what got me thinking about this list was the fact that, football was over, and I had a whole lot more time to really think about how I'm going to be building my business moving forward, some of the things I'm going to be doing, what we're going to be really attacking, what the strategy is going to be, all that kind of stuff. And as I do every Sunday, I went to church, and the sermon by Pastor Craig Groeschel. I go to Life Church, by the way. He was using his book. He was using his book as a way of bringing out his sermon. All right, and just because he was doing that, it got me thinking about how I'm selling my book and what it is I need to do. And I'll dive deeper into this concept on Thursday. I believe it's Thursday and Friday when I do Faith-Based Friday. But what I do want to make sure I bring up is that when it comes to this list, in terms of how to really sell your book, because I noticed this, I literally just noticed this before I started recording, is even though he gave a sermon about it, and even though he's Pastor Craig Groeschel, like one of the major names, he has campuses all over the world. He's putting out his book today. I think it's today that it's actually released. And when you go to his website, look at the first button. Look at the very first button. Invite Craig to speak at your event in 2025. Click it, and boom, you get the information, and he pulls your information, whatever his team is. But when he's selling his book, all right, this is a book that's brand new, that's coming out like today as we speak. And it's invite Craig. The first thing he's trying to do is get people to come out and get him to speak. So when it comes to selling your book, you've got to become a public speaker. You got to do it. You got to train for it. In fact, for me, it was kind of the reverse, because I was training to develop as a public speaker. And then I put my book out because of the feedback I was getting from the folks that I met at Toastmasters to say, this can't wait. You don't have time to be one of those folks. Oh, I'll put a book out later. No, it's got to be out now, because as a public speaker, you're losing money by the second. And they work in both ways. All right. If you're a great public speaker and you have a book, or if you have a book and you're also trained to become a public speaker, you're losing money if you don't regularly speak to folks and say to folks, hey, or indirectly, I should say, remind folks that you have intellectual property out there in which they could be getting right now. And in some, as you heard earlier in today's live stream, you just never know the way it can affect somebody's life and affect somebody's situation, because you don't know who's going to pick it up, when they're going to pick it up, how they're going to pick it up, what's going to drive them to pick it up, where they're going to pick it up, how much it's going to cost. None of that. You know none. You have no control. Once your book hits the market and once your book hits the shelves, it's a life of its own. You have absolutely no idea what it's going to affect, and it's going to be around for the eternity, right? For the rest of your life, or for the rest of everyone's life. It's going to be there. It's going to be available. And if you're not public speaking, then you can't expect it to sell. And I remember, actually, I told this story earlier today on the Move Swiftly thought, is when I wrote my first one, the first book I wrote is titled Swiftly, Your Guide to Innovative Teamwork. I bought a whole box, of them, and I just had it right there at the gym. All right. By the end of the week, the entire box of books was gone. It wasn't because Aswan was just some incredible writer. Was it because these people who bought it actually read it? Hell no. Now, I do. Again, some of them actually did read it, and we talked about it. And yes, I consider myself a great writer, but for it to be my first book, it wasn't like it was because the writing of the book was just so incredible. No, these people bought the book because they had heard Aswan speak to them every single morning from 6 a.m. all the way to 12 p.m. That was my shift, because I'd get in there, I'd work out, man. I'd run early in the morning, like 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning. I'd run, and then I'd go work from 6 to 12 and be able to grab a nap, and then come back. I believe it was like 4 to 8. The gym's no longer in business, but those were some grown ass man hours. And I brought as much energy as I did from 6 a.m. all the way till it was 5 p.m. Just full out, go. And that's why they bought so many copies of it, because they had heard me speaking to them for the longest. They heard me speaking to them for a very, very long time. And that's what made them buy. Me personally, I have gone to many seminars, gone to many things in which you hear somebody speak, and then the books are in the back. And I'm, one of the first people that goes and buys a copy, because, you heard the people speak. So number one, point blank period, if you take anything away from today's live stream, if you want to sell your book, you have got to make sure you're leveraging the public speaking. You got to develop as a public speaker, and then you got to make sure you're leveraging it and leveraging it and leveraging it and leveraging it. And you can't leverage it unless you believe it. You got to believe it. All right. So don't put it out there if it ain't coming from all up in here, the soul, the heart, baby. All right. Number 2, secure the bulk orders. All right. How you do this is going to become an extension of number 1, which is leveraging public speaking. All right. Now, I have one of my good friends, good colleague, one of my best friends, actually, the one who actually wrote the forward, for this one. It's my boy Taj Deshawn. What's up, what's up, my dude? He's new daddy these days, man. He's on daddy duty quite a bit these days, but we just know, with you. Looking forward to you coming back to the internet and all that. But a lot of people know him as I remember actually listening to some shows where some of his new guests, because he serves former athletes. He's author of a book titled Thrive After Sports, and that's the name of his business and all that. And I remember listening to some former athletes as they were talking about Taj. They're like, some bald guy who was on the internet talking about helping former athletes. So I just it was funny to hear it, because I always say, I knew Taj back when he had all it is, everything was there. But now it's like all the young athletes know him as that bald guy that's always on the internet talking about helping athletes. But anyway, he's one of the ones that inspired number 2 on this list, is secure these bulk orders. All right. So I remember this was we had actually put our book out around. So I put my book out 2019, and it wasn't too long after in which he put his book out, which is titled Thrive After Sports. Matter of fact, let me get it up here real quick, so you guys have a visual. Sports Taj Yes, let me get it up here real quick so you guys have a visual of it. So he had put it out. Yeah, see, so he put it out. It's right here. Yeah, we co-authored this one. So he put it out in 2020. Remember, yeah. So I put mine out earlier in 2019, as you see the dates in, and he put his out in 2020. And as we know, in 2020, there was a lot going on in the world, summer of social justice, a lot of people call it. And there, like, one of the big things at that time was actually, was that Clubhouse. There was Clubhouse, and I remember listening to him. He was actually the one that introduced me to Clubhouse, and I didn't know what Clubhouse was until he introduced me to it and all that good stuff. So he he was saying in many of these Clubhouse rooms. So I'm not going to say the name of the company that I used to work for because I don't want to spark anything up here, but he would do these regular Clubhouse meetings. And it was like, I don't know, like 2 p.m. every day. And they would be having this conversation about best ways to sell your book and, take questions and all that kind of stuff. And he would always tell the story about how this book let me put it back up here, this book that this lady's holding, Thrive After Sports, it eventually became a part of the required reading for a course that we were college teammates. So for a course it was for a course at a school that we played at, which is Stony Brook University. So it became a required reading for a course at Stony Brook. And as he was talking, it got me thinking about, okay, instead of me, because again, it was great to have my box of books being sold and one by one, and people were coming in and buying them at the gym I worked at and all that kind of stuff. That stuff was great. But then just as he was saying that and as he was moving forward, it taught me, okay, let me more so move in a direction in which I can create bulk orders of your book. And here's a couple things that creating and even just putting your focus and your intentions on selling more books in bulk, here's what it does. It makes it so, number one, you get higher dollar amount on the orders you make. And then also you build relationships that are duplicatable. All right. So let's we'll even use this as an example, right? This one's Make Your Move, a unique look into boxing, dance, and entrepreneurship, right? So let's say I sell 500, let's say I make a deal, cut a deal with an athletic department in, let's say we'll just use Kaiser University. Kaiser University likes the idea of getting every one of these books into the hands of all of their athletes. Let's say they have 500 student athletes. So you go to Kaiser and say, we can make a deal where you buy 500 copies of these, all the student athletes get them. That deal is easily duplicated amongst every single college in the country. And now you could present it to every single school to say, all right, all your student athletes get a copy of this, and they get a speaking gig, and they do this, and we'll set a date in which I can go and speak to them, and it incentivizes them. And that part of that also pays for your speaking fee. All right. And then you're able to follow up to do another one next year with this new crop of freshmen and this new group of people. So when you have bulk orders of your book, there's tons of them going to one institution, and then you just never know where they're going to land. If you show up to the workshop or you show up to the keynote that this author is going to be addressing, you guys get a copy, and that copy, I don't know, may stay on your desk for a whole 2 years, 2 or 3 years. It doesn't matter. It's not going anywhere. The words aren't going to change, right? And eventually life hits them like life hit me, and they pick it up and they realize, wow, that one really actually changed. So securing bulk orders is incredibly important, and don't try to sell them individually. I'm telling you this from experience. All right. Don't try to go about selling them individually. Sell them in bulk, because when you sell them in bulk, it just leads to so many more opportunities. All right. Number 3, dun, 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 offer an audio version of your book. This is something that, again, why I personally went and paid another coach to help teach me how to do this thing. We're living in a fast-paced world, right? As much of a reader as I am, I still don't have time to sit down and read a full book as frequently and as ferociously as I once did back when I just graduated college, or even while I still was in college, and I was running through book after book after book after book. I mean, bookshelf was just packed with books, like a whole bucket full of them. Not saying that to impress you, but I'm impressing upon you. At some point, you're going to grow to the point where you get your own business, or you have your own stuff you need to sell. And that time that you spent sitting down reading a book should be time that you're spending, reaching out to potential clients, reaching out to customers, doing some outreach, doing some marketing, doing something else. If you have an audio version, people will pay. What I do now is I actually have Audible, and I download certain audiobooks that I can listen to when I'm in my car. I can tune into when I'm, in the gym or whatever, doing some leisurely activity. I'm still getting the information. Granted, it's not the same as sitting down and highlighting and going through line by line and, learning and picking up things. That's fair. That is true. But you're still getting the information. And if you don't have your book at least somewhere in the atmosphere with the audio version, you're kind of, you're a dinosaur at that point. You're not really maximizing the potential of how to sell it. All right. Again, this is something I myself personally, I'm still working on getting. It's the recordings are ready. It's just a matter of, getting the transition of getting all the audio stuff situated so it's actually available on Audible. But it is on Audible per se. I just got to make it public, and that's something that I personally need to do a better job of in terms of I've been procrastinating on that for a little too long at this point. So get the audio version, or offer an audio version. All right. Number 4, extend your reach with a podcast. Now, this is something I obviously have excelled in, right? I wrote the book Move Swiftly, and then the Move Swiftly podcast now has grown to be the first show that you see when you look up innovative teamwork, all right? And it started with the mindset of, all right, here's the first book, Swiftly, Your Guide to Innovative Teamwork. Then the podcast came about, and the podcast has been the thing that has been showing up every single day in and day out, brand new episodes, new guests, whether it's me as a solo person or just me speaking to some very influential people that have done some great things in business, to the point now we're in developing the if you look up Move Swiftly Thought now that pops up as kind of the innovative teamwork, something, to take the name Swiftly and associate it with teamwork. That's all because of your guy over here, right? That's all because of your guy over here, and because of the podcast world. In a world now where podcasts, there's millions and millions of podcasts, is now you have to understand that when you put a book out, use the podcast to really extend your reach. Use the podcasting world to extend your reach, because again, you don't know who's listening, number 1, and you don't know who's going to be listening in the future. Number 2, you just don't know when or where your work is going to touch somebody else and inspire somebody else. And then that person becomes an absolute fanatic of yours, and they go and tell somebody else. And that person goes and tells 20 or 30 people. And those 20 or 30 people tell maybe about 6 or 7 people. And those 6 or 7 people tell another 100 people. And then those 100 people tell maybe one person. And then you see what I'm saying? It just simply spreads because you're putting it out there. And with the podcasting world now, all right, you can say what the hell it is you want to say. You can say whatever's on your heart. You can say whatever it is that you feel is important to say. And when it hits home and it lands with certain folks, there's no stopping you. There's no censoring you. There's no person telling you, okay, well, you're no longer allowed back on my radio. Back when I was coming up, there was the radio station and there was the news. There was what we call legacy media, that if they don't like some things that you say, or they are upset with maybe some conflict that you may create, okay, they can simply cancel you and not invite you back. Guess what? We don't have to worry about that anymore, right? We can say what the hell it is we want. You can't censor me, and we can just keep rolling and finding our crew, finding our tribe of people, and just keep on rolling. And that's what the podcasting world has done. That's what you can do with podcasts now. So do not stop talking. Right? Do not stop going after it and selling your book with using your podcast. If you were to listen to the Move Swiftly podcast right now, you wouldn't even hear me mention my book that often. But again, the name of the company, the name of the first book is Swiftly. So it's like it doesn't even need to be said. It's just right into the content, right into what we're all about, right into how we do things in terms of teamwork. And now you're building that trust between yourself and a potential new buyer, a new client, new customer, new something into your work, a new fan into your audience. That's what you're doing with the podcast. So extend your reach, because the book is just the beginning, right? A book is just the start of what it is you're trying to build. Keep extending your reach using the tools that are incredibly popular to this world now, all right? It's number 4. Number 5, donate to a meaningful cause. All right, so again, I'll repeat here. What got me thinking about giving a list like this was when I listened to Pastor Craig Groeschel speak on his book and how he's selling it. Now, one of the things that got mentioned, all right, and if you look at it, if you look at his website, you see Life Church, and you see this is actually what have both of these apps, the Bible app, they came up with all this stuff. They really have done unbelievable job in making Life Church very, very relatable, very human oriented. Everything, it's funny. Look at this. This is website. Everything I'm saying, it's right here. It's right here. Podcast, the whole thing. As you can see, this is why I attend his church regularly, right? Because I connect personally. My story connects personally with the way in which he presents his sermon. So obviously, you see why I've been drawn to his congregation and his church, right? As he put out, I mean, man, look at how many. This is my first time seeing this myself. My goodness, you see what I mean? You see why I said, like, yo, I'm still so young in this game, because it's like, man, that's what's up. But anyway, so let me see that one again. Look at but here's what happened. So as he was talking about this book this past Sunday, it got mentioned that all the sales from the book was going to be actually going to the church, right? It was going to be going in, kind of donation dollars to help the church and, whatever campuses needed and all that kind of stuff. And when it comes to me, I tithe every 2 weeks with this church. I'm again fairly new, but I've started tithing and making sure that I'm giving back what I'm making every 2 weeks. And it hit a different chord with me, because I realized one of the ideas that I actually had, not that one. One of the ideas that I had when I put out my first book, and I was in that mode where I was trying to sell more. As a strategy, I would pick a nonprofit for the month and try to partner with them every single month and say, all right, let's say 50% of the sales on the book goes to this organization and the other 50 goes to me. And I used to pick a different nonprofit every month. That was something I actually attempted to do. And when he did that, I realized, it's not that was a bad idea or something that didn't work out. It was just a matter of me making sure the cause was meaningful, right? The cause needed to be meaningful. And when it comes to selling your book, this has got to be a piece of it. A piece of it has got to be you figuring out, what are you going to do with the money? And is it meaningful? Are you taking the money and just doing unethical things and, taking people's money, and now you buying yourself stuff that you don't need to be buying and all that kind of stuff? Or are you now someone that is so trustworthy amongst the public, right? Amongst the public, the same way he is, just so trustworthy in your brand and everything you're about. You've built a very trustworthy concept to where if they pay for your book, they can be assured they can be certain that their money is going to be going back into the things that they want. That is the key. Now it's human, ethical behavior. All of that stuff is involved now when you think about number 5, because number 5 is donate the sales to a meaningful cause. Not to say you can't take any of the money. You wrote the book, you should get paid for it, you deserve it. But at the same time, selling a book isn't like selling a piece of candy. It's not like selling a car, right? It's not like selling anything else in this world. Every person that buys it, or the people that regularly buy it, you have to have built up a very trustworthy reputation for them to buy it. And if you say to them, hey, like, again, it's very believable for Pastor Craig Groeschel to say, hey, when you guys buy a copy of this book, the money's going to be donated back to the church. Very believable. We see him show up every Sunday. We see what he does. You see where the money's going. We see, and if you've ever been to Life Church, you see it's an absolute beautiful campus, very relatable. They have everything they need, just so you know that he's not just taking it and, peacing out and, going on a yacht somewhere, chilling. He's not doing that. There's a trustworthy persona that he has worked to build in. It's a trustworthy persona that you have with me, and hey, showing up, doing my work, doing whatever it is I need to do. So if you buy my book, these are the things that it's going to go to. Once I have control over it, all right. If I have control of the money's going to be going towards that. That is the key, all right. That's the main thing, and you got to think about that as you go. But if you decide that going the book route or writing a book is going to be something you do, all of these things need to be considered. How you sell your book, where you sell your book, and just as I close out, let me give you the 5 reasons again. How to sell, the top 5 ways on how to sell your book. All right. Number 1, gotta leverage public speaking. Number 2, secure the bulk orders. Number 3, offer the audio version. Number 4, extend your reach with a podcast. And number 5, make sure you're donating to a meaningful cause. Take everything into consideration. All right. I'm speaking to you directly as someone that is currently living through it and is still growing, has learned a lot in the 5 years since I put out my first book, but it's still so much for me to learn myself, that as I'm running into other thought leaders and other authors and speakers and all that, I'm seeing how many different creative ways in which we can do certain things. And that's where we can now, connect and figure out how we can work together. So that's all I have to say for today's episode. Again, let me put it back on the screen. The main website to check out to dive deeper into everything I'm doing, it's makeyourmove.com. That's makeyourmove.com. And if you want to dive further into the work I'm doing and be a part of an exclusive group, exclusive community, just tap into the Patreon link, patreon.com/as144. Come in at the regular season, come in the preseason, regular season, the postseason, wherever you are financially, they have something for you. Everyone out there, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.